Okay, so let me cut to the chase. This astrophotography refractor might be the best refractor that I have ever used for astrophotography or reviewed on this channel. It's a bit of a spoiler alert, but yeah, that's how I feel. But before I get too carried away, let me get you back to the unboxing of the refractor, how it is set up, all of the cool features that are around it, before we go into the actual setup that I've used to check it and test it against a star field and to see how well it performs on both an APS-C size sensor that I have here and a massive full-frame sensor. So let's get to it. So this is the Askar SQA55 telescope or lens, depending on how you see it, and it is a direct competitor to something like the venerable RedCat 51 that I have in my hand here. It has an aperture of 55 millimeters compared to 51 for the RedCat 51, and a focal length of 264 millimeters for a focal ratio of f4.8. So you can see it is indeed very close to the specifications of the ultra popular RedCat. But the Askar does not have a little smiling cat on the dust cap. Okay, so let's get this thing out of the box. We get some manuals and stuff as we open it, some screws as well if needed. There's also an explanation in there of how to fit something like a ZWEAF to the Askar SQA55, and that uses a timing belt. You can procure your own or you can buy it as an option from Askar. I think it's an additional $80 US. By the way, this Askar is in this case, and the telescope costs $800 US compared to, I believe, $900 US for the RedCat 51. It comes in this black case, and this is how the inside of the case looks like. It's a nice carrying case, but I've noticed that actually the EF is supposed to be mounted on this bracket here on the side, which means that if you have installed an EF or any focuser really on this bracket, you won't be able to use this case anymore. It won't fit anymore, which is a bit sad, but otherwise, you know, it is what it is. Let's get it out. So by default, it is in a vacuum sealed bag to, I don't know, maybe to make sure that it stays edible for as long as possible. And this is how it looks like in a very silver, nice looking color there. Okay, so let's look at the scope itself, because in terms of mechanics and ideas in this scope, there's a lot to like. You can see there is a dovetail at the bottom. This is a Vixen style dovetail for mounting on standard astrophotography mounts, and I will be focusing in this review on astrophotography only, even though it can really act as a lens. It also has a dovetail at the top where you can mount something like a guide scope if needed, or you can also put something like an ASI Air and mount it in this saddle at the top. This saddle at the top is removable. You can use this little nub to unfasten it, and then you have this little handle there that you can just pull and remove the handle there. You can do exactly the same thing with the dovetail plate at the bottom. You first need to remove the actual Vixen dovetail plate, and then you can do the exact same operation to remove it. That said, I'm not going to do that. I want to keep this in place because it makes for a really good, carry handle for the telescope. It also comes with this lens hood that is retractable in that you can invert it and put it back on the telescope. And here it is, installed on the telescope, and we have now the full-length Askar SQA55 astrograph that is there as available. Then, what else is available? There's multiple things that are available. You have the ability to rotate the entire telescope through the tube ring that is there and that is holding the scope assembly. You just unfasten this knob here, and then you can rotate everything at once. If you want to rotate just the camera at the camera end, you have a second rotator with gradation, so you know the angle that you're going for, and then you can rotate the whole camera assembly at the back of the telescope. Talking about the back of the telescope, you have standard M48 threads to connect your camera to the back. And of course, the telescope supports both APS-C size, but also full-frame sensors, and it supports them quite well. We'll look at the test results in a moment. I'll also show you my test bench effectively for APS-C size format and also full-size format. If you remove the other larger ring, you get within this little adapter, the black part, you can actually put an M48 or 2-inch filter in there, so you can install your filters fairly easily without needing a filter drawer. It's also very interesting to note that this telescope is a Petzval design, so it doesn't care about back focus that much. Normally, with a lot of telescopes, you need to put the distance between the flange of the telescope at the back and then your camera sensor, so that it is exactly something like 55 millimeters for a lot of telescopes. For this one, any distance between 50 and 60 millimeters will be fine. As long as you get it in focus, it's fine. So it makes it, very easy to have like no fuss about it. And it's another aspect that makes it a large candidate to the Red Cat, because the Red Cat is also a Petzval design. We also have the focus rings. We have 2 focus rings. Both have a locking knob available on them. And this is the coarse one. This is to change the coarse focus. And this one is to change the fine focus. And based on my tests, the fine focus really adjusts things really, really well. And because I didn't have an electronic focuser installed during my tests, instead I used this universal Bahtinov mask that is made by my friend Luke from the Lukomatico channel. I'll put the link down in the description as well if you're interested. And I saw that when I was like moving the fine focus with that Bahtinov mask, small movements barely made any change, and I could really very precisely align the spikes so that we had then properly at the middle of diffraction pattern. So that was very much appreciated. And then there's another feature, and I'm going to remove this dovetail plate at the top to show you a bit better. Here we go. We have aperture ring. So by default, it comes with the aperture set to the wide open of f4.8, but you can get it down all the way to f22 on this little telescope. So that makes it really a lens. And if we look inside, you'll see that we do have the telescope closing itself down all the way to f22. But I will say that during my tests for astrophotography, I saw that we were getting excellent results at f4.8, so I don't see any need to close it down for astrophotography. Okay, so now let me quickly show you the test setup that I used to test this telescope under the stars, and then after that, I'll show you the results on both an APS-C size sensor and a full frame sensor, so you can have your own idea of how good the star shapes are across the field of view for this scope. And here we have the test setup. We obviously have the refractor installed on top of my ZW-AM5N mount, and then I have spacers for 55 millimeters, but again, anything between 50 and 60 millimeters should be okay. So I just placed those spacers, and I added the ZW-ASI 2600 MC Air smart camera at the bottom end, and the smart camera here has an APS-C size sensor, but it also has an off-axis guide chip. And I immediately noticed that the off-axis stars for guiding were perfectly round when I started testing it. I'm really getting ahead of myself because we'll look at the results in a moment, so hang on for that. But this is just the first part of the test setup. The second part involves this camera here, which is the Toptech SQA54AC, which I've reviewed on the channel before, and it is one of the most budget, or as budget as you can get for a full frame cooled astrophotography camera. And yes, this is it, full frame sensor. I just basically removed this camera, put this instead, and the only thing I did is that within this little area here, I added a luminance filter just for this camera because it doesn't have an integrated UV IR cut filter. Then I did something for both of these little cameras. I pointed them at Deneb. And the area around Deneb is full of stars, so that's great for such a test. And I took 60-second exposures, 60 for this camera, and 60 more for that camera. So we have 1 hour of data each. I'll be showing the results on every single exposure, as well as on the integrated 1 hour data. And this is because I've noticed through the many reviews I've done of telescopes that integrated data over a long period of time can actually reveal issues with the optics that are not immediately obvious with just individual subframes. And of course, I've used no filter for this camera and only a luminance filter for the full frame camera, because if you're using dual band narrowband filter, for instance, it can hide optical defects with the telescope, and that's a lesson that I learned a few years back, and it was a bit of a painful lesson. So while I've already spoiled, I think, that it works well with the APS-C size sensor, let me know down in the comments how well you think it's actually going to work and what shape the stars will be at the corners of the APS-C size sensor, but also at the corners of the full frame sensor. Now, this full frame sensor, by the way, has large pixels of 6 micrometers compared to 3.7 on this one. So it's not perfect to reveal every single optical aberration, but still will give us a good idea. So yeah, let me know what you think the results are going to be on both of those sensors, because now we are going to go inside and check the actual results. And while you're leaving a comment, please take the time to leave a like on the video. It really helps the channel out. And if you're new to the channel and you like this kind of in-depth, honest review, even though this one is going to be quite positive, then you may consider clicking that little subscribe button. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel and plan on buying anything, including this telescope, the links are down in the description, but anything from Amazon, Agena Astro, High Point Scientific, etc., if you do so after clicking the links that I have down in the description, it will help me out at no cost to you. If you want to help sponsor the channel, to really sponsor my work, because it is a lot of work to make all of those videos, and you want to have a direct impact, you can join my channel as a member. It's the join button next to the subscribe button, or you can join my Patreon as a Patreon supporter, and the link is down in the description. You guys, there's no two-way around it. You guys make this channel possible. This channel would not exist without you, and thank you so much for your generosity. With that, we can go inside and have a look at the results of this little tiny cute refracting telescope, or lens, whichever we want to call it. Okay, we're inside. Let's first have a look at the field of view that is covered by this telescope, just so that we have a general idea. And I also want to compare the spot diagrams to those of the RedCat 51, which is the closest competitor. Anyway, field of view, this is it. You can see the orange square is the, if you were to use a 585 sensor, so one of the smallest sensors for cooled astrophotography cameras. And you can see it covers most of M31, but it does keep some stuff on the outside. So you wouldn't be able to cover the whole of M31, but you'd have a pixel scale of 2.27 arcseconds per pixel, which is undersampled, but not dramatically so, and it lets you get more of a field of view than you would otherwise. In white/gray, we have the ASI 533, so any IMX 533 based sensor camera. Here we are covering the entirety of M31, which is already a massive object. So you can see we are getting quite a wide field of view with this telescope. Then in red, we have the Micro Four Third sensor, the 294 MC Pro, where we are covering even more of the galaxy and the surrounding areas. And then in yellow, we're getting towards APS-C size, which is what I used when I was using the red camera, the 2600 MC Air from ZW. And in green, we have the massive one. We have the full frame sensor using, for me, the Toptech Sky Eye 24AC, and we get an insane field of view with that. So this is to tell you that this is not a telescope that you'd be using for small, tiny planetary nebulae and small, tiny galaxies. This is a telescope for wide field nebulae. Anyway, these are the field of views, and it's basically self-explanatory. It's a small refractor, small focal length, relatively fast focal ratio of f4.8. You're going to get good results. You're going to get wide fields. It's very forgiving of tracking errors. It's very pleasant to use. It's excellent for beginners, etc., etc. Now, what about the spot diagram? This is what we're looking at, and if you're not familiar with what a spot diagram is, it's basically how a star, a perfect star, or a perfect spot, effectively placed at infinity, would be projected onto your camera sensor, and it looks at it on axis, meaning at the center of your sensor, but also as we get further and further away from the center of the sensor, how the star shape changes then. And you can see at the center of the sensor, it is this top left result. Then 7 millimeters away from the center of the sensor, we have this result. Then 11 millimeters away, it's that. 15 millimeters away, it's that. And then 22 millimeters away, this is for full frame, we get this result. And effectively, we have the scale on the side, but the radius of a star, of a perfect spot at the center, is 2.5 microns, which is tiny and almost diffraction limited. Once we get into the full frame range of things, then the spot is now slightly oblong, and the longest radius is roughly 4 microns. So again, absolutely impressive, and you can see the stars are basically round throughout the large full-frame sensor, and we would expect some type of comet-ish star shapes at the very edge of the sensor. So it's a disgustingly good spot diagram, and the question then becomes how good will it be on my real-world sample now? Now let's compare this, by the way, quickly to the Red Cat 51 spot diagram that we have here. The scale is different. This is 100 microns instead of 200 that we have here. So this means that really the radius of a star for the Red Cat 51 at the very center is roughly 9 microns. And then when we get 10 millimeters away from the center, we're getting this weird, we're starting to see oblong stars basically. And it keeps going at 15 millimeters, 18.4 millimeters, and then for full frame, 21.6 millimeters, where we get a much fatter star with a long radius that is, again, around 9 microns. So at least on paper, the Red Cat 51 is clearly inferior to the cheaper SQA55 and, spoiler alert, to the even cheaper SV555 from SVBony. Is that truly the case? Let's look at the actual results. Okay, so here we have a single 60 seconds exposure on Deneb and the surrounding star field using an APS-C size sensor, which is already pretty large, and we normally start to see aberrations in the corner with a lot of telescopes with this sensor. Let's zoom in, and we can see at the very center the stars are nice, tight, round, and they're really tight. They look quite small. Like this one is basically a radius of a max of 2 pixels. Like I would say the HFR is probably around, what, 1 pixel, so 3.7 microns. So it seems to be conforming to the spot diagram at this stage. Now let's keep pixel peeping, but we go towards the right-hand side of the sensor, and it's the same thing. The stars are still perfectly round, perfectly sharp. We might see a little bit of chromatic aberration, maybe if we squint for it and we're really pixel peeping. And let's go to the top right corner. Same story. The larger stars might be slightly square, I guess, and we can see maybe a tiny bit of chromatic aberration, but still pretty insane result. Let's go to the bottom right. And it's the same story. We might be seeing slightly comet. I don't know. No, actually the stars look nice and pinpoint. It's a bit annoying because as a reviewer I need to find the bad things about this scope, but it's like really good. And this is without any bias frames or any flat frames, any calibration whatsoever, just to be clear. Let's go to the bottom of the frame. I mean, still beautiful. Let's go to the left-hand side of the frame. I don't know if I squint, this one is slightly comet-ish, I guess. But it's disgusting. It's good. And then left-hand side, same story. Maybe we can see some maybe slightly, square-ish, comet-ish shape if we're really like nitpicky. And top left, we see, again, maybe slightly square-ish shape. I don't know, it looks, definitely some chromatic aberration. We see the chromatic aberration here, blue and red on the other side, blue and red on the other side. So yes, we see something, finally, something I can criticize. But if you look at the spot diagram, this is exactly what we would expect. So it's as per specifications. This is disgusting. So I also have the stack of 1 hour worth of 60 seconds exposure, and we can have a look at that because those stacks sometimes they reveal issues that are not visible in single frames. So let's zoom in, and I don't know, nice and sharp at the center, nice and sharp on the right hand side. Okay, we see the squarish kind of shape for this particular star and some chromatic aberration in the top right, but otherwise really well controlled. Same story on the bottom right. Beautiful, sharp, pinpoint, round stars. And bottom of the sensor, beautiful stars. Bottom left, beautiful stars again. And left-hand side, it's still really good. And then top left, okay, we see this chromatic aberration and slight stars being misshapen, but otherwise, I don't know. I don't. If you're complaining about this, then don't buy it. But I have never seen such good results before. Okay, maybe the full frame can save me and show me some bad stuff about this lens. Okay, now we are on the full frame sensor. Again, no flats, no bias, no nothing. Let's look at the center. Well, as expected, we just saw it, really good stars. So the interesting bit will be when we go to the sides, where we see very good sharp stars, and the top right, very good sharp stars. Now the pixels are larger, right? So we're not able to see aberrations as much as we would be with the APS-C size camera that I have seen, but even then, this is beautiful. Bottom right, same thing. And again, I would expect to see, we see the star here being slightly misshapen, even with those large pixels. So at least we see some small issues, even on a full frame sensor. Bottom is perfectly fine as well. Bottom left is beautiful as well. We do see some chromatic aberration on this little star here. And let's go to the top left. Yeah, looks beautiful. Maybe slightly misshapen star here. That's it. It looks beautiful. It's an amazing telescope, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going crazy, so I recommended it to my friend Luke from the Lukomatico channel. He did his first light recently, and he's basically seeing the same thing on a second sample of this scope. Let me show you how it looks like on a grid, let's say from corner to corner. So there's some vignetting, right? But I mean, come on. This is full frame, guys. This is full frame. And this is cheaper than the Red Cat. Talking about the Red Cat, this is an image that I got on an APS-C size sensor on the Red Cat. And when we go to the corners, we start seeing really comets. And this is as per the Red Cat spot diagram, really. There's nothing surprising. It's as per its specs. But the stars on the Red Cat, which is more expensive, are less good. So yeah, this is a disgusting lens and a wide field absolute powerhouse. Oh, and just for the heck of it, I also pointed it at the Pleaides with the APS-C size sensor for around 4 to 5 hours on that same night. And I can show you the result. I mean, it's kind of pointless in terms of a review because you've already seen how it performs on the star field, but this is how it looks like on the Pleaides. And we can process that. So first, I removed the background. Then I did some spectrophotometric color calibration, followed by some blur exterminator, noise exterminator, some stretching, removing the stars, doing a couple of curves, and from here, placing back the stars. And this is my final image. And it is ridiculously good from here in Tokyo in a single night, a few hours. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. It's a bafflingly good telescope. I said it at the start of the video, this is probably the best small refractor I've ever used. For me, it was just plug and play, like screw in the camera, take pictures, you're good. It's the epitome of a beginner-friendly refractor. The focus is smooth. You can use it wide open at f4.8. You have this really nice, super wide field of view. It's a Petzval design, so you have the back focus that you can put, that you're free to adjust. I mean, the only drawbacks I can find for this telescope are basically the case. The case is great, but it won't fit with once you have attached the focuser to it. I mean, I'm not sure what else to find about it. It has some really good innovative stuff, like it's so easy to remove the handle / finder shoe or guide shoe. It's easy to remove everything to make it into a lens that you can use with your camera. The rotator is smooth and nice quality. It's easy to add a filter inside of it. It's great. So yeah, I mean, have I missed something? Are there more negatives? Let me know down in the comments because I'm struggling right now. Yeah, let me know in the comments. While you're there, leave a like. It really helps the video. It takes 1 second. If you like this kind of honest review, even though you might be doubting it because it's such a positive review here, but if you like those anyway, please consider subscribing if you're new to the channel, in which case, welcome to the channel. And if you want to support me and all of the work that goes into making those reviews and educational astrophotography related videos, and you're planning on buying anything from Agena, High Point Scientific, Amazon, First Light Optics, etc., including this telescope, if you do so after clicking the links that I have down in the description, it will help me out at no cost to you. And if you want to really sponsor the channel, sponsor my work, and make those videos possible, you can join the channel as a member. It's the join button next to the subscribe button, or you can join my Patreon as a Patreon supporter. Some of my Patreon ranks have access to my videos early and without ads. I hope it was a useful video. Don't forget, whenever you can, to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.